Hi folks, I'm sure everyone's seen these before. They're a fire extinguisher with the dry chemical inside. Well, I have a real good idea for one of them, and I made one already. Let me show it to you. You can see it here. It's got a big long hose that comes from it, and it's got an end in it, and that end is for pumping up balls. I heated the hose up to get it to fit inside. You can see there, and then you can see this piece here. That's the change that I made. And there's an air valve here. And the reason why I did it is I basically wanted an aerosol can that I could fill up myself and recharge it. And this here, I need to yet pinch the end so it's a smaller hole, so it kind of comes out more squirty. It comes out fine. It shoots out about, I'd say about 3 feet. So what I'm going to use it for is for basically oil spraying my vehicle and rust preserving things. And for whatever other reasons, lubricating something, whatever. You can put just about anything you want inside here. You could even fill it with water and the water would come out. But the purpose of the video is I wanted to show you how I done it. So let me put this down. I'm going to grab this little one here. I went ahead a little bit and made one little modification. And the modification I made is I took this little guard cover off. It went right here. It protected the gauge. You can see the gauge. So I cut that off. I removed it because I don't need it. And I already went ahead and loosened the gauge. That gauge there is your safe zone when it's in the charge mode. When the arrow's at the green, that's in safe mode. So let me remove this little gauge, and I'll show you what parts are needed. And I'm going to unscrew this. These unscrew just like so. I already cleaned out this portion and washed it, so it's nice and clean, nothing inside. It's aluminum. Okay, and you have this piece here. This is the important part right here. So I'm going to unscrew this piece, the tube. This is the pickup tube. Normally it would be for the dry powder that's inside. And when you do, or if you do make one of these, there's a spring inside there. That spring has to be there. If it's not there, then the whole trigger mechanism will come apart. So that goes up in there, and then the small end of the spring goes like so. And then this tube here, this portion, holds that spring in place. And that's what gives you your spring trigger to release what's inside. So I'm going to take this tube back off. I'm going to remove the piece here. I'm going to talk to you about something here first before I get started with this. You can see these pieces have little rubber O-rings on them. Them O-rings are changeable. So in my case, I'm going to actually put an O-ring in here that is tolerant to just about everything. So no swelling is going to take place in the O-ring. They have them. They're different colors. These O-rings here were placed on this little plunger part for the chemical, the dry powder that was inside of here. So no harm done. They're going to go together. Now, depending on what I put in here, might make these little rubbers swell, and then it basically is going to be no good. It's not going to work. So I'm going to get these little O-rings. They're very cheap, 50 cents a piece or so. Maybe 25 cents for that little wee one. That's resistant to just about everything. So there'll be no swelling taking place. And being that little rubbers will stay in the proper shape and the proper size, it's going to stay working for me. Okay, so let me reinsert this back inside of here. And I'll get started and show you what I did and how I did it. So the things I'm using is a small piece of hose, and this small piece of hose here goes inside of this one. The reason for that is that I want my pickup tube to be smaller. Let me get this back out. You see this? The size of this 1/2 inch hole was meant to pick up the dry powder and push it out the end hole here. So I don't want that pickup hole to be that large. I only want it to be a small hole, like so. So I'm going to insert, I'm going to actually epoxy adhesive, using an adhesive, a workshop adhesive. You can use pretty much anything you want, as long as it's going to be glued in and stuck in there. That's what you want to do. So all I'm using is this premium wood shop adhesive. Works really good. Takes 24 hours to cure, but I'm going to actually give it 48 hours. And a little bit of super glue, crazy glue, because I have another hose here, and this hose is the hose you've seen on the end. It goes in here. So I'm going to crazy glue that inside of that hole. Now you want to make sure that it's a nice fit, as snug as it can possibly be. I actually have to use a little bit of force to get it in here, so a little bit of crazy glue is just going to make it that much more adhesed to the plastic. So let me get started with this workshop adhesive, and I'm going to goo basically just all over this little piece of rubber hose here. Don't have to put it thick. I'm just going to basically kind of smear it all around it. Nothing too fancy, nothing too neat. It's just once I put it up inside that tube, the pickup tube, then over the next 48 hours, that's going to cure and harden, and it's going to become one. So then I've just reduced the pickup tube hole, which that's what I want to do, because I want to use an oil inside that can, and like I said earlier, I want to use it for basically lubricating things and rust protecting things, and for whatever else an aerosol can with oil in it would be used for. You get the idea, that type of thing. Okay, you can see I have it all smeared on there, not too thick, just to say coated. So now what I'm going to do is be careful I don't get my fingers all touching that stuff. I'm going to put it in the hole, and I'm going to turn it and twist it in there to seal everything up good. Make sure it's all coating. And I'm going to use something to push it up, make sure it's up top. Okay, there. Now I'm going to put that back on here so I don't lose my little spring inside there. And that part's done. That's all there is to that part. Still looks like a big hole, but that tube's upside there, and that hole is just a little tiny, about 1/8 of an inch in diameter. So the next things is I have a T-fitting. And I have a little air fitting. It's a chuck. The valve, your little air chuck valve would go on there to put the pressure in. You can buy these at tractor places. These are actually meant to go inside a tractor tire. The rim, the valve, they screw in. They're them tight. And then obviously the little cap to protect it. And a little piece of extension, which is used. Still good, but used. So let me get started here. And I'm going to use the same thing, the same epoxy stuff here. And I'm just going to put a little bit around the threads. Not very much, just a little bit. Now I'm going to screw it in. My little wrench. Give it a tightening up. A little more of this adhesive stuff. You can use whatever you want. Glue, adhesive, Loctite. But use something. You want to make sure it's not going to leak. And then I'm going to screw this piece in here, like so. This is where the gauge went. That's the hole the gauge went into. I still want the gauge because I want to be able to know how much pressure I'm putting inside this tank. And for my case, I'm going to keep this piece out because that's where the little air valve is going to go, the little air chuck. I'm not too sure the proper name for this little piece here, but that's going to go in this one. There's not a whole lot to it, folks. I'm going to put a little bit of this stuff on these threads too. Screw that in there. Like so. Doesn't have to be extremely tight. Snug basically, because that adhesive stuff, once it dries, it's going to tighten it right up. And now the same thing for the gauge. To reinstall the gauge so I know where safe zone is when I'm filling it with air. Put the cap on this because I'm all finished with this workshop adhesive. And then screw the gauge into the hole here. And this green portion, that's the recharge limit. Tells you you're in safe zone. I'm going to keep it original in the up position. Like so. And that's all for that portion of it. This just has to sit and dry. And then fill this up with the liquid. I'll put about this much in it. So a little less than half full. Screw it back together. Nice and snug. Now this piece of hose, this is where the crazy glue comes in. I'm going to wetten all this up. Act fast here a little bit, and I'm going to get it in that hole in the end. There we have it. Now that'll all dry in 48 hours. It says 24 hours, but I'm going to give it 48 hours before I go to fill it with oil and put in the air pressure in there. And now I have to yet get an end for the end of the hose. Like I showed you on this one here. I don't have any more ends. So, but you get the idea. I'll pick up another end. And it goes in this hole here. Now I have myself a refillable aerosol can basically. All I have to do is make sure my liquid's inside the tank. Undo the little valve. Put the air nozzle that you would pump a tire up with right here. Watch the arrow here. Go up to the green and stop. Put the cap back on. And I'm good to go. hold the hose wherever I want to lubricate or rust preserve, and it will come out just fine. So if anybody has any of these old ones and they've lost their charge, perfect idea. Works for me. Get the cap back on the crazy glue. That's all there is to it, folks. Nothing more to it than that. Curing time, it's got all set up and hardened up, and then after that it's ready to use. Would that take me a whole maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that? Not long. Thank you for watching, folks. Subscribe if you have not, and thank you very much for those that have.